As we see, the race is still hanging on the outcome of a handful of states. So give us a recap of what's happened so far and what to expect.
Right. Well, I think the real big story here tonight is that 4 years ago, we had Donald Trump, who made a crack just wide enough that he could get through that blue wall of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. 78,000 votes across those three states were all that stood between him and the presidency, or Hillary Clinton and the presidency. We've seen two of these states already get flipped back over to the Democratic Party by Joe Biden. It looks like the blue wall is there. It is strong, and it will probably propel him to the presidency, presumably that we get those Arizona and Nevada returns coming in. And the other thing is Georgia is in play, right? And that's really exciting for the Democrats. They've been trying to get states like Georgia and Texas developing their party structures there to make them more competitive. And so they have to be feeling really good about that, whether they get it or not. It would be the icing on the cake for Vice President Biden, but he doesn't need it.
So from what you're seeing then, which issues were the most important to voters, and where did the economy fall in all this?
Great question. What we're finding is that for the Trump voters, it was the economy. And for the Biden voters, it was primarily the coronavirus as well as racial justice issues. And in the exit polls, we still have to be a little bit careful because the exit polls will need to be adjusted for turnout. But it looks like the greatest break was whether or not you thought it was good to open the economy now or to wait with COVID. And we saw the Biden voters say that they wanted to wait, and we saw the Trump voters really say that let's get on with it, let's get the economy reopened, and we're turning the corner. Very much is what their own candidates had said that they ended up voting for.
So were there any surprises then so far in this outcome?
I've been really surprised, particularly by the Senate races. The Republican incumbent senators that we thought were really vulnerable, people like Susan Collins, hung on. And it looks like Tom Tillis is still, that might come down to a recount there in North Carolina. But the Republicans are hanging on. They may still control the Senate when this is all said and done. But it's looking really interesting, especially in a state like Georgia, where Senator Perdue might not hit that 50% threshold. We might have actually two runoff elections for Georgia senators, which may tilt the balance of the Senate. So that's really interesting. Looks like the Democrats might lose a handful of seats in the House of Representatives, but also retain control there. So it will be a very nice edge sort of government that if we have presumptive President Joe Biden coming into office that he has to work with.
Now let's shift gears here and look at market reaction. I mean, even without a presidential winner declared, there was a post-election rally. What are we seeing and why?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a rally. We know that markets certainly react to uncertainty. That's what they hate the most. And one of the things that was going on with the election is we did have a lot of uncertainty, certainly last night. It was exactly what we expected from a lot of the polling, that the Democrats would vote by mail. We might have this sort of what we called the red mirage and then the later blue shift. All this happened, and so, you know, there was a little bit of flux. But it looks as though if you look at different sectors, you know, they're going to respond differently to different types of government action. Some don't want these repeals of the regulations to stay in place. Some sectors are interested in stimulus. Some are interested in tax cuts. I think that with the new government coming in, with the Senate nearly being equal balance and the House not being as strongly controlled by the Democrats, it's going to be a balance of the two. So there will be some goodies in whatever next stimulus and tax cut bill we get out of Congress. There might be something for a lot of different sectors in there.
Now, what about global reaction? I mean, how is the rest of the world, especially the U.S.'s trade partners, how are they viewing what's happening with this U.S. election?
Well, I mean, this is still something that's up in the air. Again, more uncertainty. Our trade partners have been, of course, very frustrated with the Trump administration, with the tariffs, the trade wars, the blustering and the threatening that goes on with the Trump administration. So, of course, this is not sewn up, but I think that what Joe Biden is promising is sort of a return to normalcy and regular relations, both with our trading partners as well as our military alliances.
Now, I do want to look at priorities. What could a first term for Biden look like in terms of economic priorities versus a re-election term for President Trump?
Well, I think for Joe Biden, if he's really going to try to clamp down on the coronavirus, that's really going to need to be paired with a lot of stimulus, tax cuts, and particularly a lot of spending in, he said that he wants to continue doing more unemployment benefits, that he wants to inject more money into the economy, more for small businesses, the continuation of those programs that had started under the Trump administration, perhaps augmenting them and having more regulations so some of the larger corporations aren't able to tap into them. The corporations are more able to float through the coronavirus. So it's going to have to be a bit of both.
Now, obviously, the public is going to be getting a lot of election information thrown their way, which, of course, people should fact-check and verify sources. But as you mentioned, we are still in the middle of a deadly pandemic. Millions are still unemployed or have given up looking for work, and GDP growth is expected to take a hit with the stimulus package still on hold. What are you keeping an eye on as we await the final outcome of the election?
Well, I mean, it's really going to turn upon how long this third wave of COVID that we have in the United States will be with us. The industries that have really taken a hit, these industries are lagging industries behind consumer spending, restaurants, tourism, hospitality. I'm really interested in those particular sectors and how they might be supported, airline industries additionally, so that they can make it through this next wave of COVID, which will probably go long into the winter before it gets better. And those industries will need their support for them to retain their business so that they can rehire people once it's time to reopen again in the spring if we do get that vaccine, which of course is another thing to be looking for.